Hello, everyone! Welcome back to Dungeons and Dragons and Discussions. As you can tell, I already have my guest stars here, and this is the probably the first one. I'm depending on when I'm going to release it. Yes, this is going to be my first video in before if for December. Um, no, it is not Christmas related. Will there be one? Probably not, but that is okay. Anyways, this is Sarah. If you'd like to do a little introduction of yourself, you can go right ahead.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Sarah. I go by Sarah is Coffee basically everywhere on the social media that you can find me on the internet. I do D&D stuff on there. I'm in a couple of streamed campaigns. Also in an in-person campaign coming up that's going to be streamed off of the Hyper RPG channel, so look out for that. Yeah.
I love it. And as always, we have our other friend Ben here. Ben, if you want to give yourself a little introduction as well.
Hi. If you watch any of this stuff, you've probably seen me somewhere before. If not, I hope you have no idea who I am because that would be extremely weird. But my name is Ben, and this will not be the last time I will probably be on here.
Yes, Ben is my Ben screws with me hardcore. He makes my brain hurt, and that's good. And hopefully, I have a good question for you two tonight for our little discussion here. So this kind of came to me in a I don't want to say a fever dream. I was like, you ever had like one of those moments where you're walking and then someone comes up behind you. You have no idea. You don't see them. You don't realize they're there, and then you turn and your heart just rate just drops down to zero, and it's like, for crying out loud, where'd you come from? So I kind of thought about this. So in Dungeons and Dragons, you have your little passive traits, which is, to refresh my memory, passive perception, and I cannot remember what the other two are.
Insight
An
and
investigation,
investigation.
Okay.
which are hardly ever used.
Investigation
Yes.
never gets used.
Yes, that's the only one that only came to my mind was passive perception, because you always, those with the observation feats, I'm just gonna use passive perception because it's over 500. Well, 30, but whatever. So I have a question. My question today: why isn't there a passive stealth? So, like, you have people that are just like not trying to be stealthy, but they're kind of like, I don't want to say naturally, but in a moment of like, you're looking out in a crowd. I'm a security guard. My job is to, look out for people that aren't allowed on my warehouse. And I have people who aren't trying to be stealthy, but I just don't notice them, right? And of course
Mm.
that plays into like my passive perception. But why isn't there like a passive stealth as well?
Well, I think that's so interesting because, there is the
Mm.
concept of, expertise with rogues, that brings
Mhm.
that, like, double proficiency up. But that is something that I feel like is actually very broken about the game, because why are you asking the rogue with a plus 18 to stealth to roll on a stealth check? I mean, maybe
Mhm.
it's always like, oh, maybe they'll roll a nat 1.
Yes.
But at the
Maybe.
same time, yeah, at some point, you just got to give it to them, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I wonder if there would be the possibility to, like, homebrew a feat to do that, because I feel like a passive sneak would be not only great but very funny. To just, I feel like little passive things and feats that you can put in are the best flavor text for things,
Mm.
to just for the DM to know about it. And so it's like, yeah, you enter a room and like 3 people jump because for a second they didn't realize you were there. Just nice
Yeah.
little flavor.
Ben, let me get your thoughts on this.
I think so. If we're talking specifically about rogues, they kind of have it. It's not called your passive stealth, but like they have that reliable talent thing that they eventually get. But one, that's not until I don't even remember what level that is.
A
Most
higher
characters don't
level,
ever reach
12 or
that level,
15,
but
something like that. Yeah.
yeah, it's something high up there, so most characters never get to it. And if you're not a rogue, I don't think there's something like that in other classes. Maybe a bard class, maybe. but I don't ever play Bard, so I would not know off the top of my head.
Mhm.
But I think including something like that into a feat to where they can maybe pick a specific skill set, maybe not even just specifically stealth, but like a skill set to have just like a base, like I wouldn't perform under this thing because I'm so good at it or whatever.
Well, so you mentioned like rolling a nat one. Having the roll is like rolling for a skill check. It gives you the opportunity to go above and beyond whatever your passive would be. Like, sure,
Mm.
you're you're a rogue with the observation feat, so your passive perception is like 25 or 26 or high up there, but you could roll and get like a nat 20 or something like that. However, we're talking a lot about rogues here. What about other like classes? We're gonna talk about classes first, and then we'll move to races. Um, let's say you brought up bards who, I don't know if you are from the one school that, you know, the actor or whatever, taught to be light on your feet, and then monks also supposed to be like, you know, light on their feet to the point where they
Mhm.
can run up walls for some reason later on. The freaking broken monks. But we have other classes that are just trained, so you think they would be a little more stealthy and hence
Mhm.
might have a passive stealth as well.
I could certainly see some of those things. Ranger would probably be one of
Ranger.
those as well that should have something like that. I can't think of a good argument as to why there wouldn't be a sort of passive stealth beyond occasionally having a DM who always has to ask, what is everybody's passive? What is everybody's passive? And he would have to, that's another thing the DM would have to track. But outside of that, I can't really think of a reason why there shouldn't be something like that.
That's why a good DM should always have his character stats in front of him. Just FYI.
Very true. Very true. I also feel like druids would be a good one for that because, you know, once they get that, a lot of people pump into stealth for druids and then they put their pass without trace and it's like an absolutely broken stat. The one thing where I could see passive stealth absolutely screwing over players in the hands of a terrible DM, which you can't really make mechanics with terrible DMs in mind all the time because at some point someone is just going to be terrible no matter how much you account for them in the rules.
Here.
Is a DM being like, my NPC has a 20 passive
no.
stealth and you never see them kind of thing.
No.
I think that would be my only argument against it, to be like making these characters that are absolutely so broken just for the case of like screwing over your players, which is so heartbreaking. Don't do that.
No.
But yeah, I think rangers and druids would probably be the best contenders besides rogues for putting that in.
Well, part of my thing here is to play devil's advocate, like trying to go against. And I unfortunately am with this whole passive stealth thing, but I'm gonna go off of what you said, saying that you have a extraordinarily like stealthy thing that is like, oh yeah, you just couldn't see him. Sorry, that's just how it is. Because let's go on to talk about races, or let's talk about monsters first.
Ooh.
Because we have certain monsters, and my monster lore is extreme. I'm looking for my book. It's not that back here. My monster lore is extremely limited at the moment. But I know that there are some monsters with just natural camouflage, not trying to be stealthy. You just happen to, like, you're walking through, you just happen to overlook it because it just blends in with the environment. Some for some reason oozes are coming to my mind, and I don't know why.
Are you thinking of a mimic?
Mimics. So I would take mimics out of that equation.
Okay.
Because mimics are constantly being stealthy. Like, they're not, like, you have, let's say I'm walking through a crowd and I'm just being cool, but a guy looking for me doesn't notice me because I just blend in with the crowd because I have a spastic stealth. I'm not actively trying to be stealthy. Mimics are constantly being stealthy because they're constantly being transformed into whatever they are.
Right. I'd say that the monsters that come very readily to mind for me are ropers, because those things live on people's ceilings and cave ceilings, and they just look like the caves. So they're just like, they don't do it on purpose, but they're just passively very stealthy. I can't remember the names for them, but they're like the gargoyle type things that while they're not attacking you, they don't appear as anything but stone. Very Weeping Angel
like
kind of thing.
animated armor, I think, is along that same line.
Right.
Three kobolds in a trench coat.
3 kobolds in a trench coat.
Ben and I just dealt with a bunch of kobolds in our last campaign.
Oh yeah.
Yes, wearing armor.
Yeah, 3 kobolds in plate armor.
Yep.
Bless. Oh, that's so good. And then worms, because, like, they're just doing their thing, but they're always underground, so you don't notice them until they bounce out and attack you. So, yeah, those are very, like, passively stealthy things. I think Roper is the best one, because it literally could be sitting right in front of you, and your eyes would just slide over it until it just out a little tentacle to eat you up.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Just like
yeah.
that. Ben, let me hear your thoughts on this.
I would say that actually, I feel like as long as the DM did not abuse it, which there will always be a DM that will abuse something, as well as a player that will always abuse something. But I think a mechanic like that could help potential like story elements and those kind of things, like having a passive stealth for a monster, like a set stat block or whatever, because unless you're the kind of DM that just says for story reasons you didn't see them or whatever, because you have a set stealth for that monster or creature, the DM doesn't have to roll behind the scenes and roll a nat 1 on the monster's stealth, and then all of a sudden, you see the monster because it stumbles from around the corner or something.
Oh my gosh. I had, in one of our campaigns, I had the toughest time. I was a rogue with an observation skill feat, and my whole deal was he was perceptive. He was supposed to be the investigator of the group with the good observational skills. And for 3 days, he kept having this feeling of, something's watching me. Could not find this guy until the third day, where I managed to, I think I rolled pretty high, and I had bardic inspiration as well, and that managed to allow me to see the guy. But the guy was like, constantly being stealthy. So but he was disguised. So he didn't have to worry about actively making stealth checks, because he was disguised as a regular person who wasn't a regular person, ended up being some type of demon dude, and me being the hot-headed rogue was like, I'm going to go confront him. In my defense, this was my first campaign ever, and I didn't realize that as a level 3
level 3, yeah.
Level 3 rogue, when an NPC hits you for 30 damage, that's a lot. And I didn't realize this. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally gonna stab back at him.
No.
Yeah.
Listen, I have played in so many campaigns at this point, and I might still do that depending on what character I was playing. So you're fine.
Sneak attack.
Don't die, but you're fine.
Yes. There should be like some way to mar that, and we haven't even talked about races yet. I mean, I feel like kobolds, goblins, frickin' changelings, they all should have some passive stealth. Changelings, of course, only when they're like transformed or something like that. They should all have some type of passive stealth thing, because kobolds and goblins, perception plays into sound as well. Unless we have a goblin wearing some type of heavy chainmail armor, he's not going to be making a whole lot of noise. I mean, goblins in general do make a whole lot of noise because, they're goblins.
Only when they want to.
Only when they want to, that's right. And goblins can be sneaky.
Goblin supremacy.
Yes, goblins are the boss. Underrated monster, in my opinion. I play it, I use it for my my magic deck. Best deck ever. And they just know how to be sneaky, whether they purposely are stealthing or not. And I think that should play into it as well. But I'm running out of characters. What are the races that would have
I definitely would agree with kobolds, if not just for the fact that I feel like they've been dealt a bad hand like for so many years. The UA just came out and they're better now.
Hmm.
They've got that little roar going on, which I
Yep.
love. But I would love to give them a little extra leg up, in terms of they're small. I feel like any kind of like smaller race, like halflings, gnomes, goblins,
Hmm.
kobolds, all of them should just get a little bit of extra sneak just because they are blending in with crowds that
Mhm.
are naturally taller than them. So some people are just
Hmm.
going to be like, that's a child. I don't suspect them.
Dwarves, gnomes, and
Dwarves, yeah.
halflings as well.
I played a halfling in my first campaign, and something that very much annoyed her that ended up being such a boon in like later times was that people would be like, "What's that child doing in armor?" Like I am not a child, but then like later on in the campaign, she could just like sneak her way into places as long as like a child could reasonably be there,
Hmm.
and people would be like, yeah, I don't suspect that small child at all. And it was great. So
Maybe not dwarves though, because like you
They are
can.
considered medium, technically.
it's true
That's
because they
true.
they get those 4 foot, 5 foot heights.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
not bashing the dwarf race at all. But like when I think halfling, like I think child. I think child. And
Mm-hmm.
when I think gnome, I think in a book series called the Xanth series, excellent book series. Gnomes are described as basically like they're tiny, like very
Yeah.
tiny. So like that would in general, like you have something that's a couple inches big, you're not going to be able to see it. But dwarves, when I picture dwarves, yeah, they're short, but I picture dwarves like big,
They're wide.
big, wide, and muscular.
Yeah.
So they got a little bit of extra, you know, spottable qualities to them. But yeah, we have. I feel like with halflings and with gnomes, kobolds, whatever, because of their size, that could be an advantage to
Mm-hmm.
them. Now with perception, we have frick, is it wisdom or intelligence that plays into perception?
Wisdom.
Wisdom.
Is
Mm-hmm.
wisdom. Okay. So now they were talking about, okay, sure, before passive stealth, what would that be based off of? Like we can base it off of Dex because
Dexterity.
Dex always plays into it. Um, but I feel like it shouldn't be as much. There should be some type of buffer to it so that it's because of a passive like observation feat. Person's passive perception is going to be through the roof and it's going to be like
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to miss. You're not going to miss a single thing. So there
Mm-hmm.
should be some type of balance to it. You know what I'm saying?
So are you suggesting like a different ability score to be applied to it, or like some kind of cap on it?
Maybe not a cap. I think maybe a different ability score. Like and hear me out on this. This is gonna sound. I almost want to tie charisma into it
Hmm.
because, like, if you're depending on how charismatic someone is, like, I feel like it could either make yourself a target or not.
Hmm.
Like, if I'm just a, you know, general guy, happy, whatever. Hey, how you doing? Good, good. How are you doing? If I'm very charismatic, I'm just gonna be like your typical bloke. If I have a low charisma score and I'm just dark and moody and whatever, so I'm gonna stand out. I'm gonna stand out to people. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Because like depending on how outgoing you are, I feel like that could put play into a passive stealth because you're not painting a target on your back unless you're the charismatic bard with the flair always just going walking through crowds just playing your banjo or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is like that type of what I'm
Hmm.
saying.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a little, but I want to hear your input first before I
I've,
just freak out all over this.
so if I had to pick a secondary, I would pick charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Just naturally, that would be my inclination because I would lead towards the uh, deception route in it, which I think makes some sense. I think if you're going to base a passive stealth on something, it should be what the stat is already technically based on, which would be stealth. That being said, I think, and this is personally one of the things that I don't like about D&D, is the usefulness in some of the tool sets. The disguise kit, which from what I have personally gone through, have largely been based in a person's charisma ability to be able to tell what something is supposed to be able to look like and how to disguise something and those kind of things. I think that if you were to create a feat that allowed the disguise kit to be used by a charisma-based character to help increase a imaginary passive stealth, that would be something that you could do to help boost whatever that passive may be whenever you decide to use your disguise kit.
Love that.
I feel the energy coming off you. I feel like you're about to rip me apart.
No,
here.
I'm absolutely not. I'm about to be an absolute troll is what's
Okay.
about to happen. I'm about to come in and argue that I think passive stealth should be a boon to low charisma characters. That yes, charisma ties in, but it's actually your lower charisma that makes you stealthier. And let me put my argument forward here. If you are a very charismatic person, say you have like a +5 to charisma, absolutely people are gonna love you. People are gonna like want to throw parades in your honor wherever you go. Naturally charismatic people just get along with everyone, and that's its own boon. You know, it's great. It helps a lot. However, those people do not often blend into crowds very easily. They often are the type of person, unless you specifically built it into your character that like their charisma isn't the typical kind of charisma, but it's rather like, I don't know, mom friend energy where everyone just loves you because you like put so much like good out into the world.
It's accurate.
You know? But if it's that like typical charisma, I think it would be fun to be like, yeah, I have a -3 to charisma, cause I don't know, I smell bad and I don't know how to talk to people, so I don't talk to people at all. And it's like, yeah, you don't talk to people, so you're just there, baby, and no one notices you.
A wallflower.
You know? Yeah, like a wallflower. I think it'd be very neat. I think it'd be very interesting. This also ties into my staunch argument that we should go against rules as written and sometimes let people roll different abilities based on their highest stat if they're smart about it. Like rolling persuasion with intelligence if they use a bunch of their foreknowledge to try to convince someone. But yeah, that's a whole other bag of
That
chips.
is a whole different conversation. Apparently, I'm going to have you back for that.
Intimidation for strength.
Oh!
Yes, that's a big one.
Look, because let me tell you, I'm a security guard. I'm very wary of when the managers of the warehouse come, hey, we're going to do a termination and we need you back there to walk the guy out. Okay, yeah, sure. I walk back there and I see Mr. James walk out, 7 foot Mr. James walking out, and I'm looking up, I'm like, you guys need me to escort this guy out? And I'm like, what? So yes, I would agree on that. I actually like that. Because, and it works even better because I was like, oh, as you're talking, I'm like, oh, well, people would just always put their dump stat in their charisma. No, because there's so many bards, warlocks, paladins. Okay, yeah. I was like, is it paladins? Paladins, they all need good charismas to make them work, so they can't always put their dump stat into their charisma.
And that's so good because paladins usually have disadvantage on stealth anyway, so they'd be like, why would I need that passive stealth?
That is fair. That is fair. Ah. Figures. Ben, give me an argument before this bit. It's almost over here.
I think that having a passive stealth would be really good. The only thing that I can see, the only issue I can see stemming from creating an additional passive trait is for other players to then start to make the arguments. Well, can I have a passive acrobatics? Can I have a passive athletics? Can I have can I have passive other things just because I don't like it when my character fails? Like, there are a lot of people, and I'm guilty of that as well. I don't like it when my character has an epic fail or something like that.
It all happens.
it helps build a narrative for the characters to have failure, because otherwise you're just playing D&D with cheats if everything is just your passive. But that's the only argument that I can really solidly think of, is that many players will just take the ball and keep running with it until it's no longer in anybody's hands.
Okay. I'm gonna try and solve the issue. So a passive stealth, I'm gonna have to be like, the reason why you're always hearing and you're always seeing. So that's why passive perception, my camera just glitched like no business. You're passive. There we go. You're passively hearing and seeing. So perception is going to play into that. Insight, investigation. Honestly,
Passive deception.
Yeah, can we get rid of that? I can see passive deception being argued, but not really, and this is why. So why someone wouldn't be able to be passively deceptive, passively passively acrobatic or athletic, is because those three things are triggered. You can, so the only time you would be passively deceptive if you're like, oh, the king is dead, and like someone gave you a piece of information and you go tell someone else, that could be a passive deception because you were just given information that's not true. So that's the only time. So you have to know that you're lying there or being deceptive. You know when you are disguising yourself, lying to a person, trying to deceive them, like for that little bit of extra gold or a little bit of whatever. I'm gonna have to try to keep this PG because bards keep popping into my mind. I'm like, no, don't go there. But yeah, acrobatics and athletics as well, they can't be passive because it's triggered by something. Like if you're talking about just simply walking and your foot catches on like a ledge or something, and it's like your passive acrobatics. No. It's triggered. Like if you can make your person clumsy, but usually that's something that is triggered to happen. Like you're not gonna have a passive acrobatic check for jumping across the rooftops because you are doing that to yourself, and you know that you're doing that and preparing yourself to do that. Same with athletics. I'm not gonna have a passive athletics for grappling someone, which has been a pain in my butt. Stupid grappling check. Someone explain that to me. But you're not. There's no passive because you're initiating that feat. Now, passive perception and passive stealth both plays into one another because the person that you are hiding from, unknowingly, they're being passively perceptive unless they're actively looking for you. You're being passively stealthy because you are just blending in without even knowing it.
So passive stealth could only be if you weren't actively trying to be stealthy.
Yes.
You couldn't just be like, oh, my passive stealth works when I'm trying to hide in this situation kind of thing. It's only when you're unknowing of it. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So, and that plays into your charisma thing, because you have those people who are just invisible, and all sorts of different detective novels and things that I've read is people. Some of the great cases. This is a genius story. Basically, the guy that was the cooler, smarter version of Sherlock Holmes, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me. I'm gonna have to look it up, or if I do, I'll post it on the screen for you guys to see.
I think you're thinking of Moriarty.
No, that's a bad guy.
How dare you?
and all of the viewers are just gone. It's like, you know what? This video sucks. No. How he solved with the murder is people just being murdered left and right, and he realized that it was the mailman. A guy dressed up as a mailman, and you see, go a day without seeing an Amazon, a FedEx, something like that. Just go, and no, don't go to the middle of a field and just sit there for the entire day. That's not you. If you're going around, plan. You will always see a delivery guy, and unless you are looking for the package, you're not really gonna notice them. So, of course, that person has a passive stealth. because it's just a common occurrence. Now, if a kobold mailman walks up to me in modern day, I'm obviously gonna be like, that's weird. So yeah, so it's a low passive stealth. So I guess then in that case, a passive stealth would play into how normal you are.
How common certain, like races and classes would be to a geographical area. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So like if I'm a centaur mailman, then that might I don't think I've seen or heard of a person play a centaur in Dungeons and Dragons.
I have played one once.
Prove me wrong.
She was great and awful. She was a terrible person. I feel like I just was talking to Joan about a character that I'm playing now who's also a terrible person. I don't only play terrible people. No, but she was a centaur. What was her class? Some kind of mage, some kind of either like wizard or artificer, something like that.
Artificers.
Yeah. She was great. She told people's fortunes.
Stealth checks must have been fun.
Stealth checks were the worst because you have 4 feet and you have to account for all of them. It's bad. Your dex is just, I think they give you a penalty to dex for being a centaur.
Is it really?
I don't think so. I also was looking at a centaur race. I don't think so, but that would make sense.
You do get a trample attack, which is great.
That's
real fun.
That's actually why I was looking at centaur. I have a centaur paladin in the war cleric in the makes.
She was a cleric. That's what it was.
Darn it! Now I have to change the entire class.
She wasn't a war cleric, so you're fine.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't want to cut it off soon. So if you two have any last final thoughts, let me hear this now before I cut it off here.
I want a wallflower kobold. Wizards of the Coast, make this happen.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. Is there any like other issues that we should address with how someone could take advantage of passive stealth, or could we just leave it at like a passive stealth, unless there's a feat for it, should be kept low, like unless you are, good, super dexterous, or charismatic, then it should be higher or lower depending on that, or if you have like a sneaky feat or something like that.
I would advocate for lives within everyone. Is capable based on dexterity and charisma. Maybe you could like blend the two. I don't know. I'm making things more complicated for us.
No, it's all good.
But then have like a little extra like feat that certain people could take if they really wanted to up their passive stealth. The same way that like the alert feat,
tiny person thief. So
yeah,
like kobolds
exactly.
or small people.
Yeah. So I think like the alert feat ups your passive perception pretty high.
Yes.
So something like that, both hand. Yeah.
I think if a DM thinks it would be a useful tool, absolutely add it. And any DM worth their salt who adds homebrew into their world, know that at any point something terrible could happen, and it could stem from a homebrew thing, and you just have to go with it sometimes.
Yep.
Though I feel like a bunch of homebrew things also cause a lot of problems as well, but that's okay. That is okay. Tune in next time for
No.
Dungeons to the next episode of Dungeons and Dragons discussions if homebrew items are actually a good thing or a bad thing. No.
Always a good thing.
Always a good thing.
Even if they're bad, I want them.
Yeah, exactly.
That is fair. Well, thank you two for coming out and tuning in to be a guest star. This has been actually extremely fun. This wasn't so. Usually my questions are yes or no. I think I might drop that unless there's something like a really controversial question, because it opens up a more like broad like discussion, because it's more of a, oh well, we're just discussing about whether there should be a passive perception or not. Can there be? And you guys gave me reasons why, and I feel like we have a pretty good argument.
I want it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Anyone from Wizards of the Coast, if you watch these, I don't know if you do. You know, maybe.
You never know.
All right. So for everyone tuning in, thank you very much. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, I am Rayquaza, Sarah, and Ben. Thank you guys for tuning in, and have a good night.